And now joining us in studio is Simba Mochero, ZIPP youth spokesperson. We also have Tinashe Jonas, Ideal Zimbabwe. And later on, we'll be joined by Charia Tapiwa Diamond, Afro expert, and Kennedy Mandaza, ZANU-PF spokesperson. A very warm welcome to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, Monday, we'll be heading to the polls. And a lot of people are wondering, what should we be expecting? I know, for instance, you have said that you've pulled out. And what do you make of the elections continuing, even though you have pulled out?
Yeah, the upcoming, Monday elections, they are pitting ZANU-PF versus ZANU-PF. Mnangagwa's project, Nelson Chamisa, MDC is a good entity to legitimize ZANU-PF's robbery of the people's will. The first biggest, regret or rigging of this election is the collusion between General Chiwenga, Emmerson Mnangagwa, and Nelson Chamisa and the former wife of Morgan Tsvangirai, Elizabeth Macheka. What happened was, Tsvangirai was a threat to the president's ambition of Chiwenga and Mnangagwa. So they colluded with Nelson Chamisa. Nelson Chamisa's job in the MDC Tsvangirai was to get women for Morgan Tsvangirai. So what happened was, when Chamisa was getting women, he was sleeping with them first before he passes them to Morgan Tsvangirai. So when Morgan Tsvangirai married Elizabeth Macheka, he never knew that Elizabeth Macheka was a girlfriend to Nelson Chamisa. So Nelson Chamisa, being a project of Mnangagwa, who is funded by Mnangagwa, to act as opposition, although he knows that the election is rigged already, is run by the military. Because in Zimbabwe, we don't have a commander. A president is a commander of the army. Mnangagwa was put by the army, so he can't command the army. He's commanded by Chiwenga. So Elizabeth Macheka has been putting cancerous, in the food of Morgan Tsvangirai to make sure that just before this election, Tsvangirai will be dead. So this election is pitting devils in Nelson Chamisa, devils in Mnangagwa and Chiwenga. They've killed Morgan Tsvangirai. So that's the first rigging. Then the second rigging, the election is run by the military. People saying Chamisa would win, Mnangagwa would win. It's ZANU-PF versus ZANU-PF. Nelson Chamisa knows where he is, that he won't win the election, because you can't defeat the army in an election. If you defeat the army, you defeat them through war or through a revolution. So Chamisa is successfully in fooling Zimbabweans. They are hopeful that Chamisa would win. If Chamisa wins this election, it will be an arrangement with the army, because you can't defeat the army. That's impossible.
Simba, I'm going to bring you into this conversation. We're hearing a lot of allegations coming from Tinashe. Now, we know that the youth will be also coming out to numbers on Monday. With such allegations that might be going around within the country, what is your reaction towards that?
Yes, like Tinashe is saying, it's very true that there is serious rigging. And if we look at the numbers of people who have registered to vote, majority of them are the youths. But with this kind of rigging in style, we'll be surprised that if we are taking the ratio, the youth will never vote for ZANU-PF. But with this kind of rigging that they have now, he was briefing me earlier on extreme ages still appearing, one person with 200 IDs to vote. It's happening. So definitely with this kind of, they will overpower the youth. Definitely the youths are going to be overpowered.
And we know that ZEC is supposed to be looking into this issue. As the youth, have you come out in your numbers to make sure that ZEC is actually an individual in this whole situation that has taken place?
Well, it's very sad, because ZEC is not an independent body in Zimbabwe. ZEC is run by ZANU-PF. And recently the police, I think on Tuesday, they refused to allow any political party to demonstrate on the streets. They have closed that application. They've made it clear that no party shall demonstrate against ZEC. And the president insisted that ZEC is an independent body, which is a lie, because ZEC is still commanded by ZANU-PF, and everybody knows it. So there won't be a credible election in Zimbabwe as long as the election is run by ZEC, which is the girlfriend of ZANU-PF.
But now if you look at the situation back then when Mugabe was still president and the elections would also take place, Looking at that time and differentiating it with Emerson Mnangagwa's time, is there some kind of difference that you've seen? Almost probably you think it's still almost the same?
No, there is an outward difference, so that the world will think that there is a difference. But internally, inside, there is no difference at all. It's different from the Mugabe era. It was open intimidation. Everyone knew there is intimidation. Everyone knew there is violence. But now they are doing an organized kind of intimidation, whereby people are coming behind, where under this behind the scenes, nobody can see them, but people are being intimidated. Like now, they've said they are removing in the rural areas, they are removing the polling booth, and you are now going to vote in the eyes of the polling agents, the officials of ZEC, which is going to make it difficult for people in the rural areas to vote freely.
What do you make of ZEC so far? You're still maintaining that ZEC is led by ZANU-PF?
Priscilla Chigumba, she's sleeping with a married ZANU-PF minister, Winston Chitando. So she's when elections are run by a ZANU-PF prostitute, it's another story. But so the point is, ZEC is the election desk of ZANU-PF. And this woman is also an ex-girlfriend of Emerson Mnangagwa. Because we know Emerson Mnangagwa is a sex pest. So the point is, our election, Zimbabweans, we are doomed when we still have hope in elections. Zimbabweans, this is the time to wake up and rise. Because there's no power of guns.
And what do you mean it's the time to wake up and rise? What should the Zimbabweans be doing?
Thank you. I'm ready to lead the I Do Fire revolution, so that Zimbabweans will rise and we light up fire across the country, so that the devil Mnangagwa and Chiwenga and Nelson Chamisa, we lock them up in hell, because we can't be always fooled every 5 years that there's elections. There's no elections in Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa and Chiwenga, this bleaching donkey, they are busy, mortgaging all the minerals, the diamonds to these observers. They're being bankrolled, they're being bribed. You know, SADC, it's a cult of evil men. AU, it's a group of Satanists.
I need you to mind your language tonight.
Okay, thank you. Because Africa is the worst continent to be. While we've got leaders. You go everywhere in Africa, people they are electing leaders. They're not leaders. They're devils. Why are we suffering when we do elections? Because when we elect them, they save themselves, their interest. So Africans, we should now wake up to be able to remove governments. If we can do that, it means any leader who wins the election in Africa, they will know that if they don't save the nation, they will be removed. But what we do is opposite. We save the leaders. We save the leaders. When we meet leaders, we clap hands, we bow, we worship them. That's the problem of Africa. In Zimbabwe, people assume that a president is God. Emerson Mnangagwa is seen like an angel. But when we know that he's a dangerous killer.
But don't you think that it's better that Emerson Mnangagwa was able to take the citizens out of Mugabe's rule?
Thank you. A dangerous evil spirit called Robert Mugabe was being sustained by the angel of the devil called Emerson Mnangagwa.
Try mind your language,
Sorry.
Tinashe.
Emerson Mnangagwa has been the right-hand man of Mugabe. So we can't be fooled that Mnangagwa removed Mugabe. We know that Mugabe resigned when he was now an ancestor. When Mugabe felt that now is an ancestor is old, he put this spirit medium called Mnangagwa. So it's one evil man to another evil man. Then there's no better evil. Yeah.
Zimba, you representing the ZIPP youth. I want to get a feel from the youth. What have they been saying at this point?
No, at this point, hearing all the rigging tactics and what is coming out, they are really anxious. They seem anxious for this day because now they don't know if their vote is going to be heard or if their voice is going to be recognized anymore under this military type of a government, which won't really recognize the real vote that is going to come on Monday. So from the youth side, they are anxious. All they need is a free, fair, and credible election. Meaning that they are going to the polls on Monday? Yeah, definitely. The youths are going to the polls on Monday. But all they are crying for is, can we be heard? Can we have a free and a fair ground? Can we have an honest, independent body like ZEC? Let ZEC be honest with the citizens of Zimbabwe and not play gimmicks on the citizens. Show the citizens what's really happening. Don't refuse with the voters' roll if they inquire or if they ask for it, so that they can have the sense of fairness in the game. But right now, tensions are high. The youth don't really know what's coming next. But I'm sure after these elections, should the youth be disappointed for the first time, there was going to be a massive revolution in Zimbabwe. We know that there's 2 days left before the elections take place. Right now, what is the party doing? Are you gunning out in numbers to go try and find people to make sure that they don't vote with ZANU-PF? Yes, definitely. We are doing roundups. We are doing follow-ups on our supporters, just encouraging them not to give up, not to be intimidated precisely, because intimidation is happening. Intimidation is the main problem right now, especially in rural areas. With Ghanaian support, of course, they know, the media knows, we've had massive support in the rural areas, but we are getting a feedback again that they are being followed after to their homes and being threatened. Chariota Pure Diamond is joining us in studio, Afro expert. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much, Leseho.
And from both my panelists here, basically what I'm hearing is that it seems as if there will be vote rigging that will be taking place. They cannot trust ZEC at this point. What have you seen so far?
Okay, based on what is on the ground, the elections have already taken place in Zimbabwe, because if we go back into the hands of time, we realize that before ZEC announced, the formal announcement to say that they finished the printing of ballot papers, the police were already voting. And the police were voting in the absence of the election officials. The MDC personnel were not there. So if we saw that within the police stations, the question is what has been happening in the barracks? No one knows how the soldiers have been voting. So that also brings in a lot of questions in the legitimacy of the elections. Bear in mind that Emmerson Mnangagwa was the one who rigged the elections in 2008 when Robert Mugabe had given up, but he was the last man standing and is on record saying that very same things. In this current election, yes, of course, there's been no violence in this election, no physical violence of people, which is a difference from the Robert Mugabe era. But there has been massive and a lot of rigging. We have seen the telltale signs. The opposition party has been very vigilant. They've been exposing what the ruling party has been doing. So for Emmerson Mnangagwa not to campaign currently, it tells a bigger story, the tip of the iceberg, to say that the elections have already been finished. They've already have the results with them. And the opposition party is just competing in a dead rubber's election.
So you're saying that the tactics that we saw during Mugabe's term, we are still going to be seeing them?
Definitely, when it comes to the rigging of elections, yes. And the opposition party is going to be hit, and it has been hit by something that they don't know. Because we have seen the photos have been going around in the social media. We thank God for the power of social media. ZANU-PF cannot block that currently. We have seen ballot papers from an MP in Uzumba, Maramba Fungwe, that side of Zimbabwe. He had ballot papers in his baki and is an MP for ZANU-PF. How on earth is a member of parliament, a candidate for ZANU-PF, transporting the ballot papers? That on its own is amongst the many quintuple and multiple reasons that have been exposed by the opposition party. We also need to give thanks to the opposition parties in Zimbabwe for being peaceful. With all the things that they have seen currently, they have remained peaceful. They've remained resolute to say we are still going to take part in the elections, irrespective and despite all the red flags that we have seen. Of course, you have seen the African Union, the observer mission. It came, they said whatever they say. Look, what do we expect the African Union to say? We can't expect magic from them. They're just there to observe. They do not have the superpowers to stop the election. But we just need the people of Zimbabwe to be united and take action if the vote is stolen. Things have to change.
And looking at social media, we know that critics have said that the online propaganda war that is currently taking place, where the parties are trying to discredit each other. What have you seen so far when it comes to that? Because I also heard you touch on the ballot papers.
The online poll views that we have seen, most of them, the scales have been tipping in favor of the opposition party, the main opposition party, which is the Movement for Democratic Change. We have, of course, seen Mr. Chaiva from ZANU-PF, a stalwart ZANU-PF cadre, who also came with his own fraudulent estimates to say ZANU-PF is going to win by 74%, trying to counter what the actual official estimates have been. The advantage now of the information technology era is that it's easy for people to expose and to express their views online, which also gives a general perspective on the needs of the people of Zimbabwe and their wants as well in terms of their choice, in terms of the candidates that we are going to have in the elections.
And we know that political parties have used doctored images of rallies from the past or from totally different contexts to project the false impression of overwhelming support.
Yes.
What have you made of this one?
Look, facts never lie. Nelson Chamisa has got quite a huge number of followers. I believe my colleagues here can also concur with me on that. He's got a huge number of followers. Emerson Mnangagwa, we have seen it through social media. People have been running away from rallies. People were forced into stadiums, frog marched into stadiums. For normal people to run away from a rally, it tells a story. It did not happen once, it did not happen twice. It became a trend that the people of Zimbabwe are forced into these rallies where the president comes and speaks. But look what the people have done. They have shamed him. They ran away during his speeches. That on its own, it tells a story. We have seen at the opposition parties, the MDC Alliance and other opposition parties, when they call for a strike, for a demonstration, the following day, without busing people you can see on the pictures, people come willingly, people come wholeheartedly. That tells you a story. We never saw people running away from the MDC Alliance rallies, but we have seen that on ZANU-PF. It tells the deeper story. It tells that the people of Zimbabwe are crying for change. But unfortunately, the ruling party is in control of all the systems in Zimbabwe. The elections have already happened in Zimbabwe. It's dead rubber for the opposition party. But what needs to happen now as a change is for the people of Zimbabwe to rise up if and when the election is stolen.
Tinashe, I know that you have been crying over the issue of Zimbabwe, and you have been pleading for change. And now we know that a lot of people were demonstrating throughout the few months that Mnangagwa has been playing that role of president. Now, I just wanted to find out from you, I know the last time when we met, you had said that there would be some kind of a demonstration. I just wanted to get a follow-up on that. How did that go? And are we supposed to expect another demonstration? Was probably on Monday?
Okay. What is happening is that the Mnangagwa's project of creating Nelson Chamisa, to Zimbabweans are hopeful that after the elections, Nelson Chamisa would win. The hope that has been sustained throughout the Tsvangirai's era. But I do Zimbabwe, currently we are there as the voice of the reason to tell Zimbabweans that no, MDC they don't want to take over power. MDC, they are there to carry the hopes of the nation. And they are taking the nation into the fire.
So you're saying that your party does not want to see MDC taking this one?
No, MDC would never win because they are a project. A project is not meant to win. They're not supposed to take over power. Because the power belongs to ZANU-PF. MDC is created to act as the main opposition. Zimbabweans are saying Chamisa, Chamisa where he is. Remember, Morgan Tsvangirai died demonstrating for reforms. But he would enter the elections without reforms. Nelson Chamisa comes in, inheriting another project, crying for reforms, demonstrating for reforms, but he is entering the election without reforms. What does that mean? It means he would lose. Chamisa would not win. In case he wins, it's a deal between him and the army. Because remember, there's no president in Zimbabwe. the military led by Chiwenga are in power. Mnangagwa was taken from South Africa to say come and be a president. So Mnangagwa can't tell what to do to Chiwenga. The most powerful man in Zimbabwe is called Chiwenga, who is lying as a minister for defense and the vice president. You can't be a commander of the army today. Then 2 weeks later you resign, you become minister of defense. There's no country in the world that you find that someone is a vice president, is the minister of defense. It's madness. It means, he wants to control the army and is in control of the army. So Chamisa can't defeat the military. What is needed in Zimbabwe is a leader who would lead a revolution. So I'm sitting here to wait for Zimbabweans, because now they are really convinced. And 40 years of propaganda and hypnotizing from ZANU-PF, it's a lot. So right now I'm waiting for Zimbabweans to be taken to that hell with Chamisa, so that come the election results, Zimbabweans would know that Chamisa is a project. Currently, 8th of September is already set to be the presidential runoff. Tell me, which country in the world goes to elections with a day already for runoff for presidential? It means this is a game. They might make it, maybe Chamisa win, maybe not much like what happened in 2008. So Zimbabweans are losers in this election. Both this election is ZANU-PF led by ZANU-PF-A, led by Mnangagwa and Chiwenga, ZANU-PF B being led by Nelson Chamisa. At the end, no one would benefit from this election. So Zimbabweans, both the Damascus period is coming on Tuesday, Wednesday. Zimbabweans would mark my words. Currently, they would think I'm insane. I'm not insane.
Let's hear our Afro expert what he has to say about that allegation.
Well, in terms of the opposition party becoming, being a project of ZANU-PF, look, it remains to be seen. It's his views towards that. But I believe from what my learned colleague is saying, which also is a point that people have been talking about, is to say, yes, indeed, for the past more than 5 years, people have been speaking of reforms. And nothing has happened with regards to that. Well, we'll take it to say there was Robert Mugabe, but when the regime changed with Emmerson Mnangagwa coming in, irrespective of him coming in as a new government, the reforms have not happened in Zimbabwe. But now, how do you enforce reforms? Do you stay away from elections? Do you pull out from the elections? Or do you try and raise all the issues, the irregularities that are there? You try and raise the red flags. So I believe the opposition party has also been caught in a catch-22 situation where if they were to pull out from the elections, they've got a huge number of followers that they are following, who are following them and who believe in them. So pulling out of the elections, it might not be an option currently. Yes, it might be, some people would say that could be the option, but they still have to take part in the elections. So there's been a contestation of power. We have seen that, yes, of course, ZANU-PF has entrenched, deeply entrenched powers within the ZAC and all other systems, like in the army, in the police. It's all ZANU-PF people. Everyone knows that. But the question is, where to from here? What do we do as Zimbabweans? What are Zimbabweans supposed to be doing? So it's an issue now of saying probably there's a need for them to partake. Yes, it's a shameless election, but probably there's a need to follow it up, for them to partake in the elections and then encourage the people of Zimbabwe to fight if the election, obviously the election is going to be stolen, to fight and have a different attitude towards the elections as compared to what happened in 2008, where there were no reforms, there were all signs, the red flags were there, the opposition party still took part in the elections. So I believe there is still a need for the ordinary people of Zimbabwe to take part in this after the elections. It does not stop, it does not end when they cast their vote, but also an issue of protecting their vote. The streets are open, they need to do that.
But now looking at some of the options that you have raised, has there been enough voter education going around during campaigning? We've got the last 2 days left, of course.
There hasn't been much in terms of the voter education. There's been efforts, but there's always issues of resources and finances. People have tended to focus just only within the inner part, the towns of Zimbabwe. But now if you go into the outlying areas, deep in the rural areas, some people in Zimbabwe, they still believe that Robert Mugabe is still the president. He's still part of ZANU-PF. It's because they're in the peripheries. So voter education has been done by NGOs. We give thanks to the NGOs for taking their time to do that. But ZEC on its own, it has not done, it has not discharged its responsibility to educate the people of Zimbabwe. Because people are still scared. Yes, in towns, due to technology, they are not that scared. But when it comes to the rural vote, the rural vote is still scared. Why? Because of the presence of the army. Number two, because the kings, the chiefs, are part and parcel of the ruling elite. They are forcing people to vote for ZANU-PF. So those are the issues where people in deep rural areas, they've not been educated. So there's still a policy gap. There's still a gap in terms of the voter education in Zimbabwe.
I want to bring you into the conversation, Simba. What do you think of voter education throughout the past few months? What did you make of it?
No, it didn't make sense at all. There hasn't been really much of it happening. Like what my colleague said here, that the voter education was actually coming from NGOs. ZEC on its own as an independent body has done actually nothing at all to educate voters, because it's still part of their scheme, keeping the voters, the people in darkness, and go ahead with their agenda.
I'm going to invite the ZANU-PF spokesperson, Kennedy Mandaza. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening.
2 days left. At this point, can you be able to say that the elections will be free, fair, transparent?
From where we are sitting as ZANU-PF, we have had the president of the country, who is the president of our party, encouraging people to behave in a manner that will ensure that the elections are free, fair, and credible. And this is the message that he has preached ever since his inauguration and even during the campaign. And we expected also that the other players in this electoral process would also do the same. And at the moment, what we have seen is that the majority of the parties that are taking part in this election have tried by all means to make sure that they speak to the people of Zimbabwe to make sure that the election is free, fair, and credible. There are concerns that have been raised by the opposition with regards to what they expected from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. And the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, we understand that it came up with the multi-party liaison committee in which these concerns were supposed to be addressed. And in the main, the majority of the concerns were addressed. And as we speak right now, just before, during this evening, we received a report that the part that the Electoral Commission is supposed to take to do with regards to the distribution of the material that is supposed to be used, they've already started doing that. And like I indicated from the start, where we sit, we think that the process leading up to the elections up to Monday will be free, fair, and credible.
I want to come back to Simba. When it comes to
I feel like he's
hold on, Tinashe, I'll come to
he's lying to Zimbabweans. This man.
Tinashe, give me a chance, otherwise I'll have to ask you to leave.
Okay.
Now, Simba, as the youth, I want to try and get their thoughts around the address from the president when it comes to assuring the people of Zimbabwe that elections will be free and fair.
No, that's just a public stunt from the president. With all due respect, we will not accept that because it's not true. Even he knows, he's a ZANU-PF man, he knows that they have said that the transportation of the ballot box shall be done by the army. And no party is allowed to escort the ballot box. Why should the army escort the ballot box? Number one is the army that brought Emerson Mnangagwa into power. Why are they transporting the ballot box without the opposition, without our agencies?
Let's get, Kennedy, would you like to answer that one?
I will not speak on behalf of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, but this evening when one of the commissioners was interviewed, Commissioner Kubani Moyo, who is the one who was chairing the multi-party liaison to try to resolve the concerns of all the parties, indicated the process, explained the process that have taken place today, in as far as the deployment of the polling officers and the polling material is concerned. And he said that when the distribution was done today, it was in the presence of the polling agents of all the political parties that have interest in the current election. And with the experience also that we have had in the past, the material that is used in voting is not transported or distributed in the absence of all the other parties that are interested, including the observers. And this is what he said happened today. And at the polling stations, the material, together with the polling officers, they have the polling agents, they have the security that is responsible for that. The issue of the army transporting the material, when the army said that they would be ready to assist, the commission came out very clear and said that they were not going to use the army in the transportation of the election material. They may have to use the army in cases where the access to the polling stations might need the intervention, say for instance, of the use of the helicopters. But at the moment, the army has not been involved in the distribution of the material as far as the detail that was given this evening by the commissioner responsible for the distribution of the material.
Let's hear our Afro expert on this one. Transportation of the ballot papers, what's your take?
Probably it's also important to navigate it this way. Dr. Kubani Moyo is a member of ZANU-PF, so we need to say that from the beginning. Yes, of course, he's leading that organization, and whatever he says, let's ignore what he says. Let's look at what is on the ground. Maybe the army, for now, have not been part and parcel of the transportation of the ballot papers, right? But we have photos of a member of parliament for ZANU-PF, a candidate from Maramba Fumba constituency, in his car with ballot papers today. Those photos are circulating on the media. It's there. So yes, it's not the army who is doing it, but the ballot papers are in possession of ZANU-PF members of parliament, the candidates. So what does it say? Then we're looking at the issue of free. Yes, the election is free, right? But with the election, the barometer, according to the Zimbabwean standards, let me say according to the ZANU-PF standards, it say the election is free and fair. That is only if there's no violence. We don't only judge an election to be free and fair in the absence of violence. The issue now is the credibility of the elections, the last part, the last phase. Free, fair, put it aside. Let's look at the credibility of the elections. This election is flawed. The same issues that ZANU-PF was raising in 1980 are the same issues that they are currently doing now. How fair is it that a ZANU-PF candidate transports ballot papers? It goes on to say the reason why the opposition party was not allowed access or given a sample of the ballot paper is because the numbers or whatever ballots that people are going to be putting X's on, that might not be the actual ballot papers because the candidates already have the ballot papers. That is what is there on the ground.
Kennedy?
So the credibility is challenged.
Kennedy, have you made any investigations around this?
I think we should be very careful when we speak to the nation and speak to the issues, things that we see via WhatsApp platform or the social media platform. They may not resemble exactly what we are getting on the ground. As much as information is sent on the WhatsApp platform, we may not take that as what is on the real ground. But let me also say that the issues that the gentleman next to me is raising, the issue of ignoring what Commissioner Moyo has spoken about this evening, I think is tantamount to to neglecting the role that was given to the commissioners by the Parliament of Zimbabwe. Because the commissioners that we have, including Commissioner Moyo, was put in that commission by the Parliament of Zimbabwe. It was not ZANU-PF that presided as an organization on the selection process that took place to have the commissioners. These are individuals that have been put in place by the Parliament of Zimbabwe, and they are acting in accordance with the Electoral Act and the Constitution of Zimbabwe. And whatever they say, we would want to believe that that is the truth of what is taking place in as far as the organizational aspect of the electoral process is concerned. Because they were given the mandate by the Parliament of Zimbabwe, which represents the generality of the people that are in Zimbabwe. So we are bound to believe that what they are doing is the truth. Then the other issue that I want also to answer to is the issue of free, fair, and credible elections. When we say free, fair, and credible elections, we do not speak to violence only. We are speaking to the whole package of the electoral process that is taking place in Zimbabwe. The transparency that is supposed to be there. And one of the things that the current president has done is to make sure that he broadens the space and has brought about the kind of democracy that we are beginning to see in Zimbabwe. And nobody should negate that and begin to pander to the whims of some other things that are not informed by what is happening on the ground. The fact of the matter is that the president has spoken to free, fair, and credible elections. And the implication is that he and the party ZANU-PF expects that they are free, fair, credible, and transparent as per the literal, not the literal meaning of free, fair, and credible elections.
Tinashe, I want to bring you into this conversation because you're also the opposition party. And we've heard Kennedy saying that the mandate comes from Parliament.
Okay. I want to remind Kennedy that when you refer to parliament or institutions of the state in Zimbabwe, remember your party, your cult, actually not a party, your cult of devils.
Mind your language, Tinashe.
I think we will not sit and listen to Tinashe denigrating our leaders like he has done in the last weeks.
Okay, I apologize.
If we come here to debate issues, I think we need to be civil. We need to remain on the
your cult, sorry, your party.
We can't have a situation where you come in and denigrate our leaders.
Okay, I'm on the floor.
That you are a leader of a political party which does not exist.
Exists to do what? To do inside ZANU-PF.
Gentlemen, can you give me a chance to speak, please?
It exists in your ZANU-PF.
Listen, Tinashe, listen, can you please apologize to Mr. Kennedy and try and mind your language, please?
All right, I apologize to call your party a cult. I'm saying your party which doesn't care about people. What I'm trying to say is that your party has captured the government, the state. Anything which is parliament, which is CIO, which is army, is now your party. Hence now even ZEC is now, delegating transportation of ballots to your party. Secondly, out of about 5.7 registered voters this year, what is that? The tactic of ZANU-PF is known now. What they do is that if you check the statistics from 2002 up to now, MDC is scoring around 1.2 million votes in every election. That is nothing. You can't have such statistics. Secondly, out of 5.7 almost registered voters this year, what ZANU-PF is doing, they've got the ancestor called Tobai Omdede. Okay. Tobai Omdede, si duty he's old that he can't even see. He's spirit medium. But the point is, Tobai Omdede's duty is to duplicate what they do. They've already selected 30,000 youth. These 30,000 youth, they are given 100 IDs each. The IDs, they've got when they cloned the IDs, they've got the same pictures and they've got the same fingerprint, and only different ID number. So what they are doing is that these youth, they go across, polling stations, voting. So you know that 30,000 youth, when they vote with 100 times, it's 3 million votes. So already before the election has started, ZANU-PF have got 3 million votes. So Emmerson Mnangagwa is winning with the landslide victory. So what's happening is that the current voters roll, which is out, if you follow the story, it doesn't have pictures of the, because the biometric system requires the voters roll to have pictures. It doesn't have pictures because if pictures can be there, then these IDs would have then 100 pictures of the same person. So this election is already rigged in that way. So that's why the voters' roll is, ZANU-PF can die defending, not to release the voters' roll. So as he sits here, but in Zimbabwe, because the 23 parties are contesting, they are just there to legitimize ZANU-PF. That's why he's saying the election is free and fair. Observers, they don't know about the process. They don't know that ZANU-PF is cloning IDs. Hence, we have got a registrar general who is almost 100, who's 90 years something. So the election is done. Mnangagwa is one.
All right. I want to get our reporter.
Chamisa has escorted Mnangagwa to State House.
Tinashe, let us get our reporter who is on the ground currently in Zimbabwe. We have Martha Mamombe, our correspondent reporter. Martha, good evening to you. How is the mood on the ground with just 2 days left to elections?
Good evening. Now, distribution of ballot papers has started today. As you may know, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has engaged the police to assist with the electoral process as far as security is concerned. Now, tomorrow, Zimbabwe's two main presidential candidates, Emmerson Mnangagwa of the ruling party ZANU-PF and MDC Alliance leader Nelson Chamisa, will hold the last leg of their campaign rallies in the capital city. Thousands are expected to attend both the rallies, one which will be held at the National Sports Stadium, which experts are saying should be filled to capacity tomorrow. Now, at this point, Zimbabwe's elections could go either way, with some even saying that we could see a government of national unity. However, former ruling party cadres such as Professor Jonathan Moyo, who was in the ruling party ZANU-PF for such a long time, and a former minister, have voiced their concerns, even going as far as saying that the legitimacy of the elections may be compromised, alluding to the fact that the ruling party may just rig the elections. This is what is going on so far.
And how ready are the citizens of Zimbabwe for these elections on Monday?
Citizens are definitely excited. Just today we were on the streets surveying and talking to ordinary people, from vendors to business executives, who say that they're certainly excited about this year's elections, mostly because they are not going to be compromised by the presence of former leader Robert Mugabe.
And we know that the transportation of the ballot papers has also been an issue here in studio as we were having this discussion. We just wanted to find out in Zimbabwe, what is the current situation when it comes to the transportation of the ballot papers?
Now, transportation of ballot papers is under the control of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, but as the chairperson of ZEC did indicate earlier last month, that if and when there is need for the Zimbabwe Republic Police to be engaged as far as securing the ballot paper and transportation is concerned, they will certainly engage. And not because of any other reason, but the Zimbabwe Republic Police is an extension of the state, and when their services are needed, they will be willing and ready to assist.
And did you manage to speak to some of the opposition parties that will also be part of this election?
Opposition parties, surprisingly, we have 23 presidential candidates running for this election. But surprisingly, there are two men who are voicing and trying to drum up support. Just 2 days before the elections, some of the presidential candidates seem to be almost non-existent. Their presence in social media is 0 to none. Their campaigns are weak. And, these are things that Zimbabweans tend to wonder about. Do we really have 23 presidential candidates? Or some of them are working directly with the party just to divide the electoral vote? What is the reason for having so many presidential candidates if they don't even have rallies?
And we know that the last rallies will be taking place tomorrow from the MDC as well as ZANU-PF. Do we know what we can expect tomorrow?
Tomorrow we can expect Nelson Chamisa to continue with his rhetoric. That of victory is certain. He has been saying this at so many of his campaign rallies that people are expecting him to win this election. Also, the president will be expected to continue with his message that ignore those who want to detract, ignore those who want to divide Zimbabweans. Now, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has taken advantage of the rhetoric that Nelson Chamisa is using. He is a younger guy. He's more energetic. He's not afraid to say what he wants as and when he feels like it. The president, however, is more conservative. He will say things like, let us maintain peace. We are moving on. This is a new dawn for Zimbabwe. Let us not be divided. We're all one people. So these are some of the things that you'll see being, directed to the electorate differently by the different presidential candidates, with the president assuming the more mature role, whereas Nelson Chamisa is the younger one who is trying to drum up support from the much younger electorate that may not have voted in 2013.
All right, thank you so much, Martha, for those details. That was Martha Mamombe, our correspondent reporter who is currently in Zimbabwe. But now that brings us to the end of our discussion here this evening, as we know that Zimbabweans will be heading to the polls on Monday to vote in hope of a better life and a stronger currency. And here in studio, I did have Simba Muchero, ZIPP youth spokesperson. We had Tinashe Jonas, Ideal Zimbabwe spokesperson, and we also had Chadi Tapiwa Diamond, Afro expert, and we had Kennedy Mandaza, ZANU-PF spokesperson. And that's all we have time for here on Africa Tonight from Milese Khomokwanane and the rest of the Africa Tonight team. Salani Gahle.